Something about conspiracy theories is weird. Not the theories themselves, but the way people react to them. Welcome to the Truth Test, where headlines get a reality check. Say the word conspiracy, and half the room immediately rolls their eyes. The other half leans forward like you just opened a secret door. No middle ground, no calm discussion, just instant reactions. Which is strange, because throughout history, some conspiracies turned out to be completely ridiculous, and others turned out to be completely real. So the obvious question is, why do people believe them in the first place? According to the mainstream explanation, the answer is simple. People who believe conspiracy theories are misinformed, confused, maybe even a little paranoid. Case closed. Except that explanation doesn't actually explain much, because conspiracy thinking shows up in every country, every culture, every political movement. Even highly educated communities fall for them. So if the explanation is simply people are irrational, then humanity must have a much bigger problem than anyone is admitting. Here's where things get interesting. Conspiracy theories don't usually start with wild claims. They start with questions. A strange event, a confusing timeline, a story that doesn't quite add up. When people feel like they aren't getting clear answers, the human brain does what it always does. It starts filling in the gaps. Sometimes those gaps get filled with evidence. Other times, they get filled with speculation. And speculation spreads a lot faster than facts. But there's another factor most people ignore: trust. Or more specifically, loss of trust. When people trust institutions, they tend to accept official explanations. When that trust erodes, something else fills the vacuum. Alternative narratives, online investigations, crowdsourced theories. Once that process begins, it becomes incredibly difficult to stop. And here's the twist most commentators miss. Conspiracy thinking isn't always driven by ignorance. Sometimes it's driven by pattern recognition. Humans are very good at noticing patterns, sometimes too good. We see connections where none exist. But we also notice when stories suddenly change, when timelines shift, when explanations evolve. And in the age of the internet, millions of people are analyzing those patterns in real time. Now combine that with social media. Information spreads instantly, but so does misinformation. A single viral claim can travel across the world before anyone verifies whether it's true. And once people emotionally invest in a narrative, changing their minds becomes incredibly difficult. Psychologists call this belief perseverance. In simpler terms, once someone adopts a theory, they tend to defend it like a sports team. But the real story here isn't just about conspiracy theories, it's about information. Because modern societies are drowning in it. News, commentary, opinion, analysis. Half the time, people aren't even arguing about the same set of facts. They're arguing about completely different versions of reality. Which brings us to the bigger pattern. When trust collapses, narratives multiply. Some of those narratives are absurd. Others raise legitimate questions. The challenge is separating one from the other. But that requires something modern debates often lack: patience, evidence, and the willingness to admit when we don't actually know the answer yet. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. People don't believe conspiracy theories simply because they're gullible. They believe them because they're trying to make sense of a world that often feels chaotic and contradictory. When official explanations feel incomplete, alternative explanations rush in to fill the void. Sometimes those explanations are wildly wrong. Sometimes they contain fragments of truth. And occasionally, they reveal something nobody expected. Which is why dismissing every conspiracy theory automatically is just as unhelpful as believing every one of them. Real understanding requires skepticism, but it also requires curiosity. And most importantly, the ability to ask difficult questions without assuming you already know the answer. Because the moment people stop asking questions is usually the moment the real story slips quietly out the back door. And that's the truth. Test it.